Assalamu alaikum. Hope all of you are fine and safe at home. Now we'll discuss the gametogenesis in the female, that is the oogenesis. We have completed the gametogenesis process in the males, that is the spermatogenesis. So in this lecture, we'll discuss what is oogenesis and the female reproductive tract, the prenatal maturation of the oocytes and the postnatal maturation and the comparison of the male and the female gametes and how oogenesis is the process of formation of female gametes which takes place in the ovaries. It starts with the process of developing the primary oocytes, which occurs via the transformation of the oogonia, that is the primordial germ cells, into the primary oocytes, a process which is called the oocytogenesis. So, oocytogenesis is complete either before or shortly after the birth. So this is a female reproductive system showing you the uterus, the ovaries, the fallopian tubes or the uterine tubes and the vagina. So the female reproductive tract consists of the almond-shaped structures which are hanged with the ligaments with the uterus and lies close to the lateral pelvic wall. So these almond-shaped structures, they are the sex glands or the the function is to produce the oocytes and also the hormones, the estrogen and the progesterone, which helps to develop the secondary sexual characteristics in the females. So there are two uterine tubes or the fallopian tubes, right and the left. So these uterine tubes has two ends. The one end opens into the horn of the uterus, and the other end is the fimbriated end, which opens into the peritoneal cavity. Now, for description purposes, it is divided into different parts. This part is called the infundibulum, and then is the dilated portion, which is called the ampulla. The constricted portion is called the isthmus, and this is a uterine part of the fallopian tube or the uterine tube. Now these uterine tubes, they help to transport the oocyte into the ampulla. When they are released from oocytes, when they are released from the ovary, these fimbriated ends, they capture this released ovum from the peritoneal cavity and carry it by their peristaltic movements and the ciliated movement into the ampulla. This is a part where the fertilization takes place, and so it also helps in the transport of the sperm by their peristaltic movement to this ampullary part. After the fertilization, the zygote is formed and then it undergoes the cleavage. And during this transport here, the blastocyst formation takes place, and then blastocyst is embedded into this wall, which is the endometrium. So this uterus is a pear-shaped body, and this upper two-third part is called the body of the uterus, and the lower part is called the cervix of the uterus. It is 7 to 8 centimeter in length, and it has 5 to 7 centimeter thickness of its wall. So this dome-shaped structure of the body of the uterus is called the fundus of the uterus. This is the cavity of the uterus, and this cavity of the uterus communicates with the cervical canal through the internal os, and it communicates through the vagina through the external os. The wall of the uterus is thick, and from inside to outside it has three layers. This is the inner layer, which is called the endometrium, and this is the layer which undergoes the cyclic changes in each menstrual cycle. Then is the thick layer. This is the myometrium, and it is composed of the smooth muscle cells. The outer layer is perimetrium, and it is covered by the peritoneum. So the ureter, you can see here the close relationship of the ureter with this uterine artery, which is the blood supply to the uterus. So this is the passage of the ureter here. There is a close interrelationship of the ovarian changes of the ovarian in the ovarian cycle with the endometrium or the wall of the uterus, and they are under the hormonal control. So the hypothalamus secretes the gonadotrophin releasing hormones, under which influence the anterior pituitary gland. It secretes the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone. The follicle stimulating hormone helps to develop the follicles in the ovaries in the different stages. Now these follicles, they will release the estrogen hormones, and these estrogen hormones, they will affect the wall of the uterus, the endometrium, which undergo the cyclic changes, that is the menstrual cycle. It undergoes the different phases like the proliferative phase, the luteal phase. So under the LH surge, which is the luteinizing hormone surge, the ovulation takes place by the day 14th of the ovulation, by the day of the 14, and so this ovum is released. If the fertilization occurs, this is embedded in the endometrial wall, but if the fertilization does not takes place, then what happens that this the follicular cells, the rest of this mature follicle, it forms the corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum, it also forms the progesterone and estrogens, releases the progesterone and estrogen. But if the pregnancy does not take place, it degenerates and forms the corpus albicans. So the menstruation takes place. So there is the oogenesis or the oocyte maturation has the two phases, that is the prenatal maturation and the postnatal maturation. So in the prenatal maturation, the ova, they are formed in the ovary from the cells called the oogonia, and they proliferate by the mitotic division. All of the oogonia, they enlarge to the primary oocytes, of which about 2 million they are present at the birth. No primary oocyte is formed after the birth, in contrast to the spermatogenesis process, which occurs in the males and after puberty, and it is a continuous process. The ovarian stromal cells, they surround the developing primary oocyte to form a single layer of the flattened follicular cells. The primary oocytes and its follicular cells, they constitute the primordial follicle. The follicular cell layers becomes cuboidal and then columnar as the primary oocyte enlarges and at the puberty, and a primary follicle is formed. The primary follicle is more than one layer of the cuboidal follicular cells is called the growing follicle, which later on transformed into the Graafian follicle or the mature follicle. And this fluid-filled cavity is has a fluid-filled cavity, and it is also sometimes called the antral follicle. So this is showing you the release of the ovum here by the process of the ovulation, and the rest of the cells, they forms the early corpus luteum, then the corpus luteum, and the corpus albicans. So primary oocytes, they begin their first meiotic division before birth, but do not complete it. They are held in the decluttine stage of the prophase until the puberty takes place. So the follicular cells, they are surrounded by this primary oocyte is surrounded by the follicular cells, which secrete a substance which is called the oocyte maturation inhibitor, and this oocyte maturation inhibitor keeps the meiotic process arrested in the decluttine stage of the prophase 1. So this long duration of the meiotic division may account for the high frequency of the errors, that is the non-disjunction, resulting in the abnormal gametes formation. Now the postnatal maturation, the primary oocytes, which have been there or held in the decluttine stage of the prophase 1 until the puberty, they remain dormant here with the diploid number of the chromosomes. These primary oocytes, they increase in size, and they have also a membrane surrounding them, the zona pellucida, and around its follicles. So just before the ovulation, they complete their first meiotic division, and they form a secondary oocyte and the first polar body. Now the secondary oocyte, it contains the all of the cytoplasm. The secondary oocyte contains all the cytoplasm, and the first polar body has a little cytoplasm, and it is a small non-functional, and it degenerates. Now, the secondary oocyte has the haploid number of the chromosomes. So, if at the time of the ovulation it completes its meiosis two, and a second polar body is formed. If the fertilization If the fertilization occurs, the second meiotic division is completed and the mature oocyte retains most of the cytoplasm, where the second polar body is small and degenerates. So the secondary oocyte released at the ovulation is surrounded by the zona pellucida and the follicular cells, which are called the corona radiata. It is a large cell, and about 2 million of the primary oocytes they are present in the newborn female, and they regress during the childhood, so that at puberty about 30 to 40,000 remains. So only about 200 to 400 of these oocytes they reach ever their full maturity after the puberty and are expelled at ovulation during the female's reproductive life. Every menstrual cycle, it corresponds to the maturation of an oocyte, which becomes an ovum through division, yielding cells of unequal size, that is, the oocytes and the polar body. Now, this unequal division produces the ovum, which measures about 120 to 150 millimeter, which alone is fertilizable. The polar bodies, which are no longer than 10 millimeter, are not fertilizable. So, if we compare the two gametes, that is in the females and the males, the female gamete is immobile and massive as compared to the motile sperm. It has the sperm has the head with the acrosomal cap, the neck and the middle piece with all the mitochondria, which gives its energy for the motility, and a long tail. Whereas the female gamete has the oocyte surrounded by a zona pellucida layer and the follicular cells, which are called the corona radiata cells. So the sperm has the two kinds of the sex chromosomes, that is the 23X and the 23Y, whereas the female gamete has only the 23X, one kind of the chromosomes, that is the 23X, in which the 22 are the autosomes and one is the sex chromosome. So sex chromosome complement of sperm forms the basis of primary sex determination. So sex is determined by the this sperm's chromosome. Now this is the photomicrograph showing you the primordial follicles in the stroma of the ovary. These are all primordial follicles embedded in the stroma of the ovary, and this is a secondary follicle. And you can see the oocyte is surrounded by the zona pellucida layer and the follicular cells which are surrounding it, and this is the antrum filled with the fluid. Now, the abnormal gametes or the abnormal gametes formation, in which the process of non-disjunction, it can take place at the level of the meiosis 1 or at the level of the meiosis 2. So, in the, if at the level the homologous chromosomes, they do not separate properly in the meiosis 1. What happens, the daughter cell get one of the daughter cells gets the 24 number of the chromosomes, the other daughter cell does not get any of the chromosomes. So in the second meiotic division, with that, what happens that there is a non-disjunction of the homologous chromosomes, and this occurs. What happens that in the daughter cells there is the uh, one of the daughter cell gets the almost all of the chromosomes, whereas the rest other one gets does not get any number of the chromosomes. So as a result, if the sperm fertilized an egg with the 24 number of the chromosome, the resulting zygote is trisomic, that is 47 number of the chromosomes. And if a sperm fertilizes an egg which does not get the any of the chromosomes, then it is the monosomic zygote, that is the 45 number of the chromosomes. So this occurs due to the non-disjunction of the gametes. The other in the male gametes, that is the sperms, there are various structural abnormality also, like the double heads, but these type they does not cross the cervical mucus, and they die or they degenerates uh, before they reach the ovum. So this is all about the female gametogenesis, that is the oocytogenesis. We have completed the process of the gametogenesis in the females also, that is the oocytogenesis. So next we'll discuss the female reproductive cycles, that is the menstrual cycle and the ovarian cycle. Thank you.